I'm sure by seeing the title of this video, you wonder how could Southwest Airlines of the US causes the crash of Ethiopian Airlines in Africa. Here is how. Southwest Airlines was founded by Herb Kelleher in 1975 in Dallas Love Field Airport. He was a lawyer, not a manager, not a pilot, but sure enough, he was such a smart person who became the second best manager of the 20th century, elected by some business magazine, right after Jack Welch of General Electric. His innovative ways of running the airline was so fantastic that I would say most of the airlines today are imitating him. And one of the things that he came up with was the turnaround time from the point that the airplane lands until it takes off. I guess he was noticing that this takes like an hour and a half for the airplanes to land, and very relaxed. People get out of the airplane, they load and unload the airplane and refuel the airplane. He looked at it as this is like a Formula One race. As in Formula One, in less than 3 seconds, they change the tires. They do a lot of different things. I mean, they refuel the airplane, all of that in a very short time. So he brought that kind of culture, and I remember reading about it. One day he gathered 5,000 employees of Southwest Airlines in that Love Field Airport, and he tells them that, we're gonna make this in 10 minutes. What used to take like hour and a half, he says we want to make it in 10 minutes. And there are two type of people here. The people think that we can do it, please stay, and the people who think that we cannot do it in 10 minutes, those people can resign today, and the HR is waiting for you. And sure enough, I guess everybody stayed and they made it happen. Of course, 10 minutes was the stretch goal, but they easily made it to 20 minutes. I've measured them a lot of times myself, and in 20 minutes, they turn around the airplane from the time the wheels touch the runway until they depart. And when you think about it, you have 1 hour of extra time on each airplane every day. Imagine how many, I mean, on every flight. Imagine how much extra you end up with, how many extra airplanes you end up with as a result that you don't need to pay for it. Free airplane to make money. And that's how they have always been profitable. Even when that 9/11 thing happened, they were still profitable, even though everybody else was not profitable. And to this date, even though Herb Keller now has been dead for a few years and he was not a chairman in the last decade, I think, they still have not had a crash, any crash that kills the people in the air and the ground. There are a few accidents. They had one compressor explosion in the air that caused one passenger to be sucked out of the airplane halfway. They pulled her back, but because of the trauma, whatever, she was dead. Another one that the airplane ran out of the runway and killed someone on the ground by hitting a car at the end of the runway and going to the highway. But 750 airplanes, almost 50 years of flight from 1975 till now to 2023. That's a lot of airlines cannot claim anything close to that. So the tickets are cheaper than all the other ones. The quality is higher. And I mean, I consider the quality of an airplane when it doesn't have an accident necessarily. It's not necessarily what kind of service they provide me and all that. If the airplane is in one piece, that's for me, that's great. And Southwest Airlines has that characteristics. I always tell my kids, say, fly with Southwest, don't fly any other airline. Anyways, now, what did Southwest do wrong? Why am I blaming it for the crash of, the Max 737 Max in Ethiopia? Well, this is why. In order to make Southwest the airline that it is today, they have to come up with some changes. The changes that some of them were very positive, like using two captain level pilots as opposed to one captain, one first officer, one with the ATP certificate, which is the highest certificate, the other one just a commercial license. The ATP requires 1500s of flight time. Commercial requires like 200. So used to be that all airlines, and it's still in Europe and rest of the world, the captain has that 1500. The other guy is a 200-hour flight. The pilot. I mean, I have 300 hours, so I don't consider myself good enough to become a co-pilot of an airliner. Anyways, he insisted that both pilots have to be ATP, 1500 hours at least, and after so many years, FAA adopted the same method, and now every U.S. airline, both parties have to be ATP rated pilots. That's great. It does cost them more money, because you have two ATP rated pilots, you have to pay more salary. But he did it, and still he was profitable. What else is there? Well, when these two airplanes, I mean, besides all these other things that he did, from the way people seat at the Southwest Airlines, like no assigned seat, you can get in and sit whatever you want, wherever you want, which makes it faster for people to seat. What else he did? He figured that okay, after a while, his pilots are gonna outgrow the job, and they're gonna say, "Hey, I can't fly 737 forever. I need to pay more because my friends who are flying 747 or 767, they're paid higher." So how can he stop them from migrating to other airlines that had other airplanes? Now, he adopted 737 only because we want to have the same spare parts in all our depots, and the same maintenance, same training for the technicians. Why should we have 3, 4 different type of airplane, which was more common in other airlines? Every airline, they had, I mean, it was a pride for them to say, well, we have 737s, we have 757s, we have 767s, we have 777s, we have 747s. This was something very good. These guys said, no, we only have 737s. So they changed the pilot pay scales. So a 737 captain in Southwest Airlines, as long as he had enough time, he could get paid equal to a 747 captain in another airlines. So there was a message to the pilots. So why do you want to move? Why do you want to go learn another airplane, yet another complexity? Stay here, the airplane that you're flying every day, and make more money. So he was able to achieve 11 and a half hours of flight time from each airplane every day on the average, compared to other airlines who were doing like 8 hours a day. So that big difference. I mean, your airplanes are like 30% more available to fly with no cost almost. So again, what does this have to do? This has to do with the Ethiopian crash. Well, because he was insisting on 737, when he was a little airline, this didn't matter. Boeing was still developing other airplanes, 757, 767, all these other airplanes. When he became big enough to be number 3, number 4 airliner in the US, and other airliners started, copying what he was doing, using the same 737, all of a sudden everybody was asking for 737 and nothing else. I mean, design me a new airplane as long as it's called 737, which means you have to keep the same basics of the airplane and modify just a few things. For FAA not to require a recertification, and for the airlines not to require retraining of pilots on the new type of airplane. If you call it 737 and you can convince FAA that it's the same 737, then they don't require you to do anything. No recertification of anything. Now, what's wrong with this picture? Well, 737 was designed in 1960, as opposed to Airbus's 1980s A320. 20 years ahead, a lot of major changes, whatever. One of the things that 737 has shorter legs. I guess this was designed for the airports that did not have a lot of facilities, and people had to get off, go to the ramp, and walk to the airport building. So a shorter leg meant shorter stairs, and passengers can get to the to the floor much faster. And as a result, this was the way the airplane was designed, with shorter legs. Now, you want to put a bigger engine on it to make it stronger, to make the airplane stretch it long, to make it longer, more passengers. Well, there's not enough room. It hits the ground. If you look at the 737 today, you see that the bottom of the cowling is almost flat, which means that they have come up with this trick to make it a little bit, space-wise between the cowling and the ramp. There's got to be some, safe space. If the airplane lands on one wheel, you don't want the engine to hit the ground. So once they, I don't know, passed 737-500, 600, the engines started becoming bigger and bigger. On 737-800, it got to the point that the engine was so big, it didn't fit under the wing. They had to elongate the front strut, the front wheel, and they had to move the engine forward and a little bit higher compared to the wing. And this caused the airplane to be out of balance completely, to the point that a computer had to keep it down. Otherwise, if you open the throttle, the airplane wanted to almost, climb. So they came up with a system to manage that and bring it down to, level flight. And when you have a computer managing your airplane, if that computer malfunctions, that's the end of that airplane. And that's what happened with Lions Airline in Indonesia, followed by Ethiopian Airlines. By the way, I was supposed to be a passenger of that Ethiopian Airlines exactly 48 hours later. Same flight, going to the same destination, 48 hours later. But because of this crash, they changed the airplane. Of course, I'm a kind of person, because I've tried to be in every airplane in the world, which I've done it since 1960s. Every airplane that was ever built by the Western world, I've been a passenger, including Concorde. And I still haven't done the 737 MAX. I don't know if it's a good idea or not a good idea. I keep telling my kids who travel a lot for business and otherwise that, hey, try to stay away from 737 MAX if you could. Even though FAA says, oh, it's safe, we have tested it. Well, that's what they said last time the first one crashed. Everybody thought that they fixed the problem, but they had not done anything. As a result, the second crash happened. Anyway, so this is where I call it the law of unintended consequences, where Southwest Airlines comes up with a great idea, which works for them very well, but that causes a change of culture at the supplier, which is Boeing, saying that all my customers are asking for 737, whatever it is, call it 737. So they don't need any new airplanes. They don't want new designs. They don't want anything else. They just want 737. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to stretch it as much as we can, change the engine, make it as big as we can, and still call it 737. So when they did that, that caused the two airplanes the 737 Maxes that crashed. So now then you know the rest of the story. Now you know why I blame Southwest. And of course, these days, it's not just Southwest. American Airlines does the same thing, and a few other ones. So it's something that Southwest has started it, and now everybody's following the same thing. And maybe it's time for FAA to come up with a rule saying that, okay, this design is 1960, now it's not 2023, so one design cannot last more than 50 years or something. Come up with another airplane, call it a different name, and everybody has to follow. But trying to stay with the same airplane, I can't imagine 20 years from now they want to still have it 737 with the shorter leg that cannot carry the bigger engine and whatever that goes with it. That's it. Thank you for watching.